So this person says that their dad was such a nice, kind human being. He would help anybody, even if you were a stranger. His family and friends would always tell him to be cautious because yeah, he might stop and help people, but what if people have bad intentions and they try to rob him and things like that? So there was one night where he got out of work a little late. It was 11 p.m. and he was hoping to make it home to have dinner with the family, but he knew it was a little late by then, so he was at the very least hoping that he would get home and that his wife would be awake. What he didn't know was that the entire family was actually waiting for him to get home. It didn't matter what time he was gonna get there. However, back in these days, there was no cell phone, so basically he couldn't call the family and tell them that he was gonna be there late or that something happened on the way home. So what the dad couldn't call and let his family know was that in the middle of him driving through this very foresty, darkest part of the outskirts of the city, he had seen two individuals stuck on the side of the road. Dad couldn't help himself and he didn't think that he was gonna stop thinking about them if he just like drove past these people. So as Dad was driving through this foresty part, he sees on the side of the road a car and a man with a child standing there asking for help. He decided to turn around and ask them what they needed help with. The man ends up telling the dad that he just needs a car jack because his tire literally exploded while he was driving through there and he has a spare tire but he didn't have a car jack. So the dad agreed to help and he actually parked his car in front of the man's car. And he says that the forest he was very familiar with because he would go there to camp out with his kids, but at the time it was night. I mean, nobody was there and it looked a little spooky to be there at that time. So he was like, I need to help them out. Can you imagine how scared that kid is? And the dad not finding help, so yeah, he was gonna help them out. So the dad opens up the trunk, he gets the car jack out, and when he does, he realizes that the boy started running towards the forest and was playing near the trees. So the dad tells the kid, hey, you might want to come back over here because it's dangerous to be in the forest. So the kid didn't really listen to the dad, and the man that was there was like pretending like he didn't hear him. So he's like, you know what, let me not tell somebody else's kid what to do, and he just decided to put the car jack underneath the man's car. So as the man was moving that car jack and putting that tire in place, the dad was looking at the kid and he noticed that now the kid was just playing in between the trees. He did notice that the kid wasn't really getting that far away from them, but he was almost like playing hide and go seek behind each tree. So he would walk behind a tree, peek out, and then walk to the next tree and peek out. So he was just like watching the kid this entire time. So dad decided to tell the man, hey, the kid can get hurt. There's a lot of bad things in the forest. And the man was so concentrated on the tire that he just looked at him and said, huh? And that's when the dad sees that the kid just came running and got inside of the car. So he decided not to say anything else and just let it go completely. The man was finally able to change the tire, and obviously he was so appreciative. The man tells the dad, like, I know nobody would have stopped and helped me because it almost looks like a trick, like I was gonna stop you to rob you or something like that, so I really appreciate you stopping. He was like, I would have not stopped here. So thank you so much for stopping and helping me. I really appreciate it. Thank you. So the dad's like, how do you think I would have left you guys here alone? It's so dark and scary out in this forest. The man just started laughing a little awkwardly, but he started walking towards his door to get in the car so that they can leave. The dad ends up getting his car jack and he was about to walk to his car, but he notices that only the man was inside of the car now. The kid was nowhere to be found. When he sees this, he goes to the driver's window and he's like, hey, where's the kid? Like, where's the kid that was with you? The dad said that this man's face just like changed completely, that his eyes were like wide open. It looked like they were gonna pop out of his face. And he ends up looking at him and telling him, what kid? What kid? What kid? What the fuck? The dad was like, the kid that was standing with you when I passed by. That's why I stopped to help you. As soon as he says this, both of them heard a laughter, like a little boy laughing, and those laughters were coming from like the back of the car, but obviously nobody was there. And it was in that moment where that guy tells the dad who had stopped to help, hey, get in your car. We need to get out of here. Get in your car right now. The man did wait for the dad to get in his car because again, it was in front of him. He wanted to follow him and make sure that they both got out of there. They drove together for about 10 minutes and they started to see a lot more of the city, and they both stopped at the first gas station that they saw. When they stopped, the dad actually got the car jack to put it in the trunk because when that happened, all he did was throw that car jack in the passenger seat to get the fuck out of there. They both started talking like, what the fuck? Like, they were both scared, but at the same time, the dad was like, well, let's not think of it as a bad thing because if it wasn't for that little boy, I honestly wouldn't have stopped to help you. However, the guy ends up telling the dad that as he was driving driving through that forest is when he heard that same laughter, and that was when his tire actually exploded and he got stuck on the side of the road. He tells the dad, I am 1000% sure that that was the same laughter that I heard because it almost sounded like a little kid laughing. So the person sharing the story is the son of the dad that stopped to help the guy on the side of the road, and he explains that now his dad has passed, but even until his dad got into very old age, he would maintain this story and he would say that this really happened and he is not making any of this up. So what do you guys think this was? Like, was it something good because he stopped to help him, but also why did he hear the laughter when his tire exploded? Like, what the heck? Or what could this have been? Also, oh my god, I cannot take the image out of my head of this kid like going from tree to tree and peeking out, and like the guy who stopped to help was just staring at him like, why, what the fuck?
Hello and welcome back to a series of spooky stories, The Haunted Tea Spill. This series is brought to you by all things spooky and ungodly amounts of paranormal activity. Featuring the initial necklace. If you don't like gold, they have silver. It's down here if you want it. Now onto the story. I have a feeling I've been an empath my entire life. As an elementary school child, I had experiences with sleep paralysis, vivid dreaming, and astral projection. That is a lot to deal with when we haven't even figured out how to manage our emotions yet. That sounds very overwhelming for an elementary school child. Even adults, but especially a kid. When I was 19 years old, I married and moved into my godmother's house. She considered herself spiritual. She had experiences with Ouija boards. Things were always creepy in the home, and sometimes I felt like I was being watched. But one day I started to have sleep paralysis, and this was in 2009. I'd wake up in the morning when my now ex-husband left for work. After saying goodbyes, I would try to stay awake, but oddly, I was so exhausted I would go back to sleep. I was in that state of awareness, lucid dreaming. Then out of nowhere, someone would come into the room, hop over me, and lay right next to me in bed. Don't do that. Who are you and why are you here? I did not consent to this. Stranger danger. This continued for about 2 years on and off. It never failed that as soon as I was alone in the house in the morning, something would come into the room, jump over me on my bed, and sit down right next to me. At different times, they would claim to be different people in my life. All different people with the same lack of boundaries. Got it. Even in the afterlife. I recall one time that it told me it was my sister and stated her name. Another time it said that it was my grandmother coming to visit. One time I got really angry, and during another episode of the same thing, I was fed up. In my dream, I remember getting up and chasing the thing away, and doing so, I left my body and was chasing this thing all the way down the hallway out of the house. Left your body? I remember seeing tennis shoes, knee-high socks, and shorts. Sometime after this, we purchased a home and moved out in 2011. I thought I escaped until I started having dreams in the new house. Damn. Tragic. A couple months after moving into my new home, I received the news that I had a cousin that passed away. This cousin was like a brother to me. I remember spending time and healing from his loss, but I would still get these dreams about being in my room, laying in bed, unable to move because something wanted to come out of the closet and scare me and talk to me. How about we stay in the fucking closet and don't scare me? Leave me alone. 8 months after my cousin's death, 2012, I woke up to another episode of sleep paralysis, but this time it was different because I actually saw what it was. I saw a pale, white-skinned creature with arms wrapped around my neck and giving me a smile too big for its face. Why? As I prayed for help, this creature looked up at something that approached us. This creature suddenly let go of me and ran off into my closet. I recall something grabbing my hands and lifting me off my bed. Then I noticed my cousin that had passed away. He held onto my hands and walked through my house, told me that I needed to get out of the house. Say less, cousin, because I believe you. My cousin led me away as he pulled me out towards the garage. Then, suddenly I was forced to wait. I had dreamt that my cousin had came and pulled me out of the horrible situation. I recall praying to him in the past, asking for him to be okay. I asked for a sign that he was happy, but in turn, my cousin decided to come and protect me. Wait, it's scary but sad. The scary, creepy thing, not your cousin. I mean, that's whoa, but not scary. You know? Ever since that vivid dream, I've never encountered anything in my home again. To this day, I've never had a sleep paralysis dream. I do recall the last vivid dream where I suddenly noticed my cousin was sitting down nearby. He was waiting for me to show up, and he told me that he was okay. He told me that heaven was amazing, and he told me that he got to play games and sleep and do whatever he wanted. He also told me that I didn't need to be sad anymore. Please. I don't want to cry. Those sleep paralysis dreams were very real. Whatever was following me knew exactly when to push me into those situations. I don't like sleeping in the dark anymore, and I'm very mindful of anyone asking for help in case something paranormal is going on. It says at the very end that I can say your name and then that your daughter also loves watching my videos. But after that, it says you're no contact with some family. So I don't want to put the names out there just in case, if that's okay. It says that you're watching, obviously. So if you see this video and you comment and you like want to show that it's you, that's okay. But the specifics, like after that, saying that you're no contact and all that other stuff, I feel like the names would give it away. So just to be safe, rated on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the least scary, creepy, spooky, 10 being the most. That's a lot. That is a lot, a lot. Also, very wholesome about your cousin. I'm so sorry for your loss, and that is so sad. But at least you got to see them, and they got to tell you that they were okay. And then they, like, rescued you. You know what I mean? That's really cool. Freaky, but really cool. If you have a story of your own that you want to submit, you can do so on the link tree in my profile. Please don't forget to go follow my backup account because I am posting like crazy over there and I am trying to save up for a car. Any money that I make on that page will be going towards my car jar. So help girl out. Thanks. I'll see you at the next episode. Stay spooky, friends.
I feel called to share my story of demonic possession. This story was originally posted in the subreddit R Christian, and it was originally posted by Not What I Was. Let's get into it. This is a bit long, so please bear with me. This is as accurate of an account as I am willing to go into about my experience becoming possessed by a demon and how God delivered me from it. This happened more than a decade ago. After years of healing, I believe God wants me to tell my story. I grew up as a pastor's kid in a Pentecostal church. I was always really excited when I got to hear testimony about people coming to God and Him lifting people up out of where they had been. I started thinking that it was too bad that I grew up in the church because I wouldn't have a story like that. Before anyone gets on my case, I was around 5 when I started to think this way. As I got older and into my early teen years, I had grown extremely close to God. I knew a lot about the Bible and had a surface understanding of the translation process from Greek to English. I could feel God's presence and had really dedicated my life to Him. But something happened. I accidentally stumbled upon some mature content on the internet. I freaked out and didn't use the computer for about a month. But I also hadn't felt adrenaline like that before. I started trying to test the boundaries of what I could do to get that jolt that I felt. I started to find that I wanted to do things just because of the feeling of knowing I could get caught. After some time, I went back to intentionally finding adult content and quickly became addicted. Not to the content itself, interestingly enough. I started having a lot of trouble between wanting to be close to God and not being able to stop myself. Then came a week at a Christian camp. I renewed my commitment to God, and by the end of camp, did not feel the need to do anything for the adrenaline that I had previously craved. That's when I made a mistake. On a walk, I said out loud that God would protect me from anything that Satan could throw at me. This was not a statement of God's power, but of my belief in my own willpower. Later that night, I saw something strange on our front porch, something that was big and hunched over. It looked like something between a man and a beast. I looked out my window at it, and it turned to look at me, and I froze. At that moment, I realized I wasn't seeing something physical, I was seeing something demonic. Oof. I could not get myself to move as it had its gaze locked on mine. My brother had to physically pull me back in the window. I told my brother what I had seen, and he got our dad, and we prayed together. When I checked again, it was gone. After that, I started seeing demons daily. They showed themselves more often as time went on. It had to get to a point where I pretended they were not there because of how it would look to others. School was rough, to say the least. This next part is impossible to explain without going into detail that I'm not willing to go into online, but something happened where I got very stressed and ended up going back to my addiction to adrenaline, though not through the same source. Best I can explain is that something that was not a sin became my focus for something that was a sin. Like if I made a sandwich with moldy bread and then blamed the middle part for feeling sick. I tried to change what I was doing, but tried to change the wrong part. I started to believe that the part I tried to change was demonic. which it was not in the end. It didn't occur to me at that time that demons were present before the thing I tried to change. I feel like demons are always around us in a sense. They're always looking for a way in, for that invite in, so to speak. And so, like, that's why in a lot of different forms of like Christianity, they talk about putting on like an armor of God, so to speak. Um, But let's get back into it. After literally years of this, I became bitter. I saw everyone as having things easy. I held grudges like there was no tomorrow, and I felt that God had led me down the path I was on. The bitterness became focused on God. I hated him for allowing the demons to torment me, literally every day for years. I felt no fault in the matter, even though it was my own pride that got me into the mess I was in. One night, Uh, I was being tormented by my demons, keeping me from getting to sleep as they often did, and I reached a point where I had had enough. I told God I was done and that this was his fault. I told God that I knew you should never break a promise to God, so I promised God that I would turn from him and never come back. I didn't care about anything at that point and just wanted to hurt God the only way I knew how, taking it out on myself. I wanted to hurt so that this loving God would see what he had done, knowing he knew I would be there since the dawn of time. He could let How could he let things align this way? But never once since praying with my dad had I asked God for help. I felt like God owed me. I demanded God to change the situation without once listening to what he had to say. Plus, not to mention, in a way, like, you kind of challenged both God and the demons. Like, that's kind of what you did, bro. So, I think God's letting you learn a lesson on this one. At that point, I felt something in my mind. I had a vision of a parchment. A voice said, I can give you power. I can make this end. It felt demonic. I was angry and thought back to it. I don't care. If this will hurt God, I'll sign without reading it. I mentally signed the parchment, and the next thing I knew, it was morning. That day, there were no demons at all. I had no craving for adrenaline. I felt at peace for the first time in what felt like forever. Partway through the day, I had thought it was a voice in my head. It started asking me seemingly random questions. It didn't take long to realize what it was, but I was glad. I still wanted to hurt God. It found it amusing how it could hide itself so that my dad didn't know it was there. It started suggesting things that slowly changed how I acted. No one knew. These things were subtle, but at some point I realized parts of my day were missing. At first, it was small bits here and there, but then it was longer periods of time. Eventually, it would take over my entire school day, and then a bit longer, and then longer. It's eerie how subtle it was, as I noticed less and less that I was losing my own life. After a while, what life was mine changed from the outside world to being trapped in my mind. I started to lose less time and spend more of it watching what I was doing, only fleetingly having brief control. I spent about a year and a half in this state. I began to regret my decision. Could you imagine that? Like feeling like you're a prisoner in your own body, like you're watching from behind the bars, or essentially like you're watching from the back seat while somebody else is driving. Like that's terrifying. All right. I started planning my time out, figuring when I could take control. After some time, I started trying to take control when a friend who was a Christian was around. I started acting and talking in ways that were out of character for me, but not out of place for someone else. It was subtle, but he started asking if anything was wrong. I could never answer. I'm not sure on the specifics, but at some point I felt a presence when I was trapped in my mind. It told me to tell it what I wanted to say to my friend. Later that day, I unexpectedly had control over myself. I quickly flipped to a spare notebook I had, and the words I had said came back to me. I wrote it all down. And then I lost control again. This thing controlling my body read the note, laughed, and then threw the notebook away in the cafeteria garbage, dumping leftover food on it. I felt like I had been deceived and felt really down. Okay, and this is where we're going to wrap up part one here too. There's going to be a part two to this video. We're really getting into it now, and I hope that you guys stay tuned and check back for the part two on this. If you have any scary stories that you would like to share, please go ahead and email those to grimlylit, that's GRIMMLY lit, LIT at gmail.com. I would love to hear from you guys, and I would love to share your stories on here. But until next time, stay spooky.
The guy that I dated last fall talked like he was something else pretending to be human. This is Caitlin's suspicion to Spooky Series Story Time, and she said she's actually debated sending this for months because she's well aware of how insane this sounds. But she says that the reason that this is so strange is because she's actually a speech therapist, and so she works with kids with developmental disabilities and with stroke patients. So she's very familiar with pattern recognition, with paranoia, with delusions, and she spends all day analyzing speech, behavior, tone, and social cues. And that's how she knows that how this guy was acting was not normal, and that's what scares her. So she says last fall she matched with a guy on a dating app. She calls him Daniel for the story, and she said that his profile looked normal enough. He was mid-30s. He was like average looking, very average, but he seemed nice enough. Though she did notice that all of his prompts on his profile seemed like optimized, almost like AI wrote them. Like she said, she literally remembers that one of them said, looking for someone to build meaningful relationships with. And she was like, that's vague, but dating apps are filled with men who try to optimize their profiles in order to give women what they think that they want to hear. So she didn't think much of it. He didn't have his job listed, but he said that he worked in AI systems architecture. And when she asked what that meant, he said he helps train conversational models and behavioral prediction systems. She said that upon initially talking, she actually joked that his text to her sounded AI generated. And he always used perfect punctuation, but also had this strange habit of mirroring whatever she said. So if she was like, LOL, stop, that's so funny, he would answer, LOL, okay, that's actually so funny. But it didn't exactly come off as like authentic. It was more like he was restructuring her tone. And so when she like sort of pushed him about it, he was like, well, that would make sense considering I literally train AI models. At the time, that actually made sense to her. She was like, oh, of course, like I didn't think of that. And like he spends all day talking to AI, so of course he would mirror it a little bit. So they have their first date, and it's at a ramen place in the city where they live, which is a bigger city in the Midwest, I would say. And when he shows up, he looks just like his photos. There's no glaring red flags or anything like that. But as they're having this conversation, she does notice that he's a little bit off socially. Like if she made a joke, he would just take a second too long to laugh, or like he would like watch her face to see how she reacted to something, and then he would react the same way. But she thought maybe he was just a little awkward in person, even though he was really good at texting. And she did like him because he seemed to really listen to everything that she said. He remembered tiny details about their conversations, and he even found ways of working small details that she had mentioned before they had met up into the conversation as to make it like more natural for her. So she was feeling good about it, and she continued seeing him, and she liked him. This habit of him remembering literally everything continued. He remembered very minute details of her life, like the name of her childhood dog, and even the fact that she had mentioned once to him that she hated microfiber fabrics, which she had mentioned in the very first conversation that they had had as like part of a joke about a blanket. He remembered her coffee order after she had it one time, and she was like, most men that I've dated literally could barely remember my birthday. So I felt very seen as I dated him. At the time, I felt romantic, but looking back, she says she thinks that he was actually collecting data. So there was one time that they were out and they were walking through a park, and this little kid fell down, and she turned when he screamed, and then Daniel turned, but instead of looking at the kid, he looked at her like he was watching her reaction. His face seemed to suggest that he wasn't concerned for the child, but he was concerned for her reaction. And as she was looking around for where this kid's mom was, Daniel says, that appears to have caused distress. And that just stood out to her as something that was like very strange to say in the moment, because who talks like that? And after that, the weird little things started piling up. She realized that he always copied phrases that she would use. Like one time she was like, I'm literally dead. And he would say the same thing, but he would say it like in an incorrect way. And then one time she texted him that I'm about to have an aneurysm because of this line at the grocery store. He texted her a couple days later and he was like, I'm literally about to have an aneurysm because of the traffic that I'm sitting in. It was like he was using language and putting it together as an observation instead of in a natural way. She said that she knows in retrospect, it seems like she should have stopped dating him, but he was consistent in ways that she hadn't experienced. Like she had had horrible luck with dating, and she was just happy that he never played games with her. He always texted back as soon as she texted him. He was always showing up when he said he would show up, and she could look past his seemingly odd conversational skills, I guess. And she said physically they worked out. He was always coming over, always happy to snuggle her. But after a couple of weeks of them spending the night at each other's places, she said that she noticed that he barely ever slept. Sometimes she would wake up and he would be sitting up in bed. He told her that he just had insomnia and often couldn't sleep and that he was thinking. But he never seemed tired, and he would go to bed at the same time that she did. So she was just like, maybe he naps? I don't know. But then this one night she's over at his place, and she wakes up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, and she hears whispering coming from the living room. And he keeps repeating the phrase, "It's good to see you, man," but he's repeating it in different inflections. Like he's saying it in different ways. Like, "It's good to see you, man. It's good to see you, man. Good to see you, man." You know, like just repeating the same phrase over and over, saying it in different ways. So she walks out in the living room to see what he's doing, because she's like, why is he talking to himself out there? And it takes him a second for him to notice that she's standing in the doorway, and he like seems startled that he sees her, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And he was like, "Practicing conversation improves comfort." Just very matter-of-factly. And she was like, "You sound like an alien that's trying to fit in." She said she said it as like a joke and she expected him to laugh, but when she said it, his face was just one of pure confusion, and he seemed to not really know how to respond. She said he actually looked so confused, like he wasn't sure how to respond to that she actually felt bad. But then he said, "I'm not an alien pretending to be human." Just weird, right? Then she introduces him to her friends. And she said one of her friends and her have this inside joke where her friend calls her mayonnaise girl because apparently she puts mayonnaise on everything. I don't know. She said it's just a dumb joke, but Daniel had never heard her use this phrase or any of her friends use this phrase, but after he hears the friends say it, he says it constantly. Like he would text her and he would say, "Mayonnaise girl would enjoy this restaurant." He would send her a link to a new place in town. Or she would just make a statement about her day and he would say, "Classic mayonnaise girl behavior." She really thought as this was going on that he was just awkward, but then things started getting even darker. Oh, also she said he was very vague about his personal history. Like she had asked where he grew up and he said mostly in the Midwest, and she was like, "Mostly in the Midwest?" And he said, "Yeah, my family relocated a lot based on work opportunities." And she was like, "Well, what was your mom like? Did you play sports?" And he would answer in the same like AI generated way. He would say, "My mom was very organized and I participated in group activities." And keep in mind, these conversations were happening in person. It wasn't like over text. He kept things deliberately vague, and there were like no stories or details or like embarrassing childhood memories that most people share as a way of bonding. But around the 3-month mark, she realized that she still didn't even know his parents' names. And so she asked, and he just answered and said, "My parents prefer to keep a low profile." She said it was just weird wording. And then when she pressed, he just said he didn't feel comfortable sharing data from their lives. And it was the same with his friends and his colleagues. Like he would tell stories or give details about his coworkers in a very vague way. Like he would be like, "A coworker recommended this restaurant," or "The team went out for drinks." And one time she actually pointed this out to him while they were in the car going somewhere, and she was like, "Well, what coworker? Like, what was his name?" And she said he actually went quiet for a second. Like he had to think about what this coworker's name was. And then he was like, "Ethan." So she was like, "Okay, well, what's Ethan like?" And he went quiet again for a second. He was like, "He is socially comfortable and he enjoys basketball." And that was the entire description. It was just his traits. So she thought that was very strange as well. And then a few weeks after this, right before they broke up, she said there was a night that they were talking and she was telling him a story about how she was like awkward in high school or something. And she actually showed him a photo. He stared at the photo for a long time. And then he looked at her and he said, "Why do humans enjoy seeing older photos of one another?" Humans. So she lets that one go, and she doesn't really know how to answer his question because she's like, "I don't know, maybe he's just talking weird again." But then shortly after that, they were watching a movie in which one of the main characters was grieving his mother who had passed away, and Daniel looks at her and says, "Do humans prefer shared sadness because grieving is less efficient alone?" Again, humans. So she looks at him and she's staring at him, waiting for him to explain what he's even talking about. And then he seems to correct himself and he's like, "I mean people." She said the look on his face was literally like he had caught himself in an error. And that's when she actually really started feeling uncomfortable around him and realized that it wasn't a social awkwardness that he had. There was like something genuinely off about how he perceived others. And the final straw came a few nights later. She was at her apartment. Daniel was there. He was in the living room. And Caitlin was in the kitchen. She was talking on the phone with her dad. And they were just talking about like basic things. Like they were mostly talking about her cousin's divorce. And then he had asked if she was coming home for Thanksgiving. And then also if she was still dating Daniel. He said, "Are you still seeing that tech guy?" And she was like, "Yeah, I think I really like him." But she didn't want to go into too much detail because he was in the other room. She didn't think Daniel was listening to the conversation. So then she gets off the phone, normal enough conversation. They go to bed. But then that night she woke up around midnight and she heard voices in her kitchen, 2 voices. She thought her TV was on, but then she looked over and realized Daniel wasn't in the bed and he wasn't sitting up in bed, which he did, on occasion. So she sits up in bed and she's listening and she realizes that the voice that she's hearing is her father's. And she's like, "Is my dad here?" But then she hears her own voice answering her father, and she's so confused, and she gets up and she's like, "Did he take a recording of me?" And she walks in the kitchen and Daniel's got his back to her and he's standing at the kitchen counter, literally staring at the cabinets, and he's repeating the same conversation that she. This is part 2 of The Guy That I Dated Was Not Quite Human. This is Caitlin's story. I'm sorry, cut off on the last one. But those texts that he was sending her also seemed AI generated. He would say, there seems to be a misunderstanding. I am still learning appropriate boundaries. Please return so we can continue. And she was like, continue what? She said she blocked him, and then a week later, his online dating profile disappeared. And she had tried searching for him online, even though he didn't have social media to begin with. But she couldn't find anything. There were like no tagged photos, no mentions of him in professional publications, literally like not a trace of this man online anywhere. But she says the creepiest thing happened about 2 months later. She was driving home and she was connected to Bluetooth in her car, and she was talking to her dad on the phone, and she had put Daniel far from her mind because what else is she to do? And they had hung up, and after they had hung up the call just for like a split second, her own voice came through the speakers, and it was that recording of when she had been on the phone with her father saying, yeah, I think I really like him. She said it was the exact same tone, the exact same inflection. She has no explanation for it. And even though that hasn't happened again, she's like, I know that I didn't imagine that. Does anyone know why that would have come through my Bluetooth? She says, please, somebody out there, give me a technical reason for this happening, because I am still freaked out. But luckily, she has not heard from him or heard that recording since. So maybe she's in the clear. Let her know your thoughts. Weird story. Was Daniel just socially awkward, or was he something not entirely human? Let me know your thoughts.
Snacks in hand. The vibe is set. And once I start, don't eat too much, because you got to stay fun. But come on, bestie, yeah. Hi, bestie boo. I missed you. You want to go get your snack? You know it's time, right? Your gardening essentials too, okay? Okay. Uploaded a new compilation on YouTube today. So if you want to watch my story times in long form while you clean, go to the gym, whatever, go to my YouTube. Don't watch nobody else's, because they making money off of me. Anyways, let's get on with the story. Take of the story, let's call this girl Jasmine. Jasmine does DoorDash, and this is an experience that almost made her quit. If she didn't need the money, she would have quit that night. It's a regular day. She's doing DoorDash. She gets a pickup. She goes, she picks up the food, she goes to the address. She looks at the app. It says, leave at door, right? Her favorites. She don't even like meeting people anyway. But while she's on the way to that house, she gets a phone call from the customer. And the customer says, hey, I know it says leave at the door, but I'm going to need you to hand it to me. She's like, okay, yeah, sure. No problem. That's my job anyway, right? So she continues to drive there. She gets there. She parks. She picks up her DoorDash stuff, and she's heading towards the door. And she sees someone standing at the door waiting for her. Again, nothing seems odd. Nothing seems bad, Except as she's walking up the porch, she realizes literally in front of said front door, there's that sign, that circle thing. I forgot what you call it. I think it's called a pentacle, but it's that circle with the star in the middle. And again, if she's able to submit this story, that means she follows me. But even if she didn't follow me, she knows about that stuff, So she sees it and she kind of stops. And the person is just like looking at her. And it's this older, creepy looking guy. And he's just looking at her like, hurry up. Well, she still stops there and she's looking down and looking at him. She's like, hey, I'm not comfortable going over there. Could you come? I'll give it to you from right here. He's like, why can't you just walk up and give it to me? And that's all she needed to hear, because, bitch, if you wanted this food, you would have came down and got this shit. There's a reason why you want me to walk up them steps, and I ain't doing it. Not me. And so she repeats herself. She's like, I'm really not comfortable walking up there. I'm not comfortable with this sign that's on the floor, so could you please come and get your food from right here? And he starts to get a little irritated. He's like, bro, just give me my food. Just give me my food. And then she remembered that on the app, it says leave at the door. So she's like, I don't need to walk up there. I could just place this food right here, take a picture, and go about my day. So that's exactly what she does. She places the food down, and she's about to take the picture, and the guy peeps what she's doing. And so he started going off like, I'm going to report you. I'm going to report you. She's like, why would you report me if your food is right here? You can get your food. So immediately she pulls her phone out, and she starts to record him. And as she's recording him, she started to notice that in the camera, there's a shadow behind him. When she looks up at him, there's no shadow, but when she looks into the phone camera, there is a shadow behind him. So she's like, hell no, I'm going back to the car, because she done already took the picture and everything like that. She's walking back. And he immediately starts apologizing, like, I'm sorry. I'm just very irritated, like, I'm hungry. I just wanted my food. Here, I have a tip for you. And he pulls out a $50 bill. He's like, here, this is yours. Just come get it. And so Jasmine look at him like, you must think I'm fucking stupid. You must think I got stupid written on my forehead or something. So she starts speed walking to her car. And as she's speed walking, she realizes that he's also walking towards her car. As she's realizing that, she also realized there had been someone standing on the side of the house, but towards the back the entire time. At this point, she is like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. She's shitting bricks. She don't know what this is, but she knows it's not good. So she don't even speed walk no more. She took it. Thank goodness she had left her car running, so she didn't have to turn it on or anything like that. When she started running, he also started running, and that guy that was on the side of the house also started running too. She gets in the car and she takes off. At this point, she's hyperventilating, I can't even talk. She's crying, just know she's freaking out. And once she gets far enough, she calls the cops. Told the cops what happened, gave the cops the address. She called DoorDash, told DoorDash what happened, told DoorDash that she called the cops. After she does all that, she immediately starts praying, right? And then she heads home. The next day, the cops call her back to give her a follow-up. Why did the cops tell Jasmine that nobody's living in that house? Not only did they tell Jasmine that, they told Jasmine they didn't see what sign she was talking about. Went on that front porch and everything, there was that creepy sign. It was not there, and nobody lives in that house. Till this day, Jasmine don't know what that's about, but she knows that it was absolutely real, because if it wasn't, how would somebody be able to order DoorDash? Of course, DoorDash didn't do anything about it. Yeah, till this day, she never actually got answers. What do y'all think happened in the comments? Y'all already know what I think happened. I don't even need to explain it. Personally, I think Jasmine should get my ebook so she could cleanse herself from that situation, because you never know. But don't forget to tell me what you was eating in the comments. And don't forget to head over to my YouTube to watch, the compilations. Oh, and I dropped the song today, so if you want to check that out, you can. Okay, bestie, I love you. Bye.
Something in the woods knew his name. This story freaked me out so bad. A guy named Gabriel tells this story, and he said at the time he was living with his family in Central Florida. Gabriel says that before anyone asks, he was completely sober during this experience. He'd been out with some friends, and now it was time to walk back. Now it is dark, and he was passing by some woods, but this is a normal route for him. Gabriel says he's not afraid of the dark, and he's also quite tall and intimidating looking, so he doesn't really worry too much when he's walking alone at night. He also mentions that he makes sure to always carry a pocket knife on him just in case. Okay, so he's walking by the forest, and all of a sudden, from inside, he hears his mother calling, "Gabriel, help!" This stops him dead in his tracks. He recognizes her voice immediately, and she just kept calling him, more and more frantic. Now, at first, this voice was coming from deeper in the woods, but as this situation kept escalating, he said that the sound of her panicked calls got closer and closer to him. He also makes a note that in Florida, things are always buzzing. The forest at night, tons of noise. On this particular night, the forest was oddly quiet. Usually there is so much going on, and he didn't really put two and two together until his mother started calling him. So right away he goes, "Mom," and he starts moving towards the woods to go help her. He was thinking that she'd gone out for her nightly run and then somehow fell and hurt herself. So he was very concerned. But then something about her voice made him pause. It sounded almost like reverb, almost metallic and echoey. Just a little bit, just a little hint. And then he remembered something. About 10 minutes prior, he had gotten a message from her saying that she was at home with his little sister and she wanted to go on her run. So could he please come home to watch her while she does that? And now his heart is racing and his mind is spinning. And he's thinking, no, she wouldn't have had time to come out here and get to the woods. And also, she wouldn't have left my sister there. So he immediately takes out his phone and he calls his mother. And as the phone is ringing, the voice in the woods is getting more and more frantic, panicked, and desperate. So she picks up the phone and he's like, "Mom, are you in the woods?" And she's like, "No, I'm waiting for you at the house so you can come watch your sister." And guys, the moment that she said she was at home waiting for him, the voice in the woods stopped abruptly. Gabriel said in that moment, a wave of fear and dread hit him unlike anything he'd ever felt before. Because whatever it was in those woods was using his full name, not his nickname everyone knew, the name only his mother would call him. And now it's starting to sink in that the voice, not just the fact that it was kind of reverb and echoey and metallic, but there was also a flatness to it. Not that same loving voice his actual mother would have used. So Gabriel freaking books it out of there. He said he ran faster than he has ever run in his entire life. And he got home, he was breathing and heaving. His legs felt like jello. And his mom and his sister are, sure enough, sitting there on the couch just like, are you okay? So he's telling her everything that happened. And at first, his mom is kind of doubting him. Like, he could tell she's not buying it. And she even asked, like, are you on something, dude? But the seriousness in his voice and demeanor and the look on his face convinced her that he was absolutely being honest about what he is saying. He ended up making her promise that she would never run through those woods again, and especially don't go running at night. Something in those Central Florida woods knew his name, knew his mother's voice, knew he'd be walking past. And the moment his actual mother answers the phone, it stopped. Like, it knew it was game over. Y'all, what was that? Some people speculate that this is the kind of experience that happens just before people go missing and are never found again. Like, what would have happened had he answered it? All right, drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you have a creepy story of any kind, you gotta share it. And if you're new here, definitely follow for more creepy story time.
Somebody who grew up in the country like me, you pretty much know what deer act like, right? They're pretty skittish, very nervous creatures who kind of like when they notice you, they sit for a second and then they bolt, right? Imagine seeing one that doesn't do that. So this type of deer in Appalachia specifically is called the knot deer. People in Appalachia started talking about a deer that looked like a deer, but it was not a deer. It looked normal, but it's like uncanny valley deer version. Like their legs were all bent wrong. You know how deer's eyes usually are like on the side of their head? Not usually, they are on the side of their head. With the knot deer, they're more like on the front, you know, like a predator instead of a prey. Sometimes they stand too still. And when they move, it's almost like you can tell like they're trying to move like a deer, but it just isn't working right. And with every encounter somebody has had with these creatures, they say that they're not afraid of humans like a normal deer would be. A normal deer always bolts at the sight of a human. I mean, obviously there could be some like logical explanations for that because, you know, sometimes deers could get like disease. Brain worms are a thing, makes animals act very weird. I don't know, maybe even weird lighting in the woods could kind of throw off your perception of things. But you can choose to believe that, or you can choose to believe the thousands of stories telling the same thing, but like slightly different versions of the same thing. I read the story on Reddit of this guy who was driving through the Appalachian Mountains, right? Like through the back roads where there's no street lights or, you know, anything like that, like barely any houses. There's pretty much trees and mountain roads. And if you know anything about back roads, they're usually very, very windy. Literally one of those roads where your headlights are the only lights that you're gonna see for miles. So he rounded this corner and he said that he saw a deer standing there, like near the ditch on the side of the road. And he said that like nothing was weird at first, it was just a normal deer until it stood up on its hind legs. It wasn't like a rear up, it was like a stand up. Motherfucking standing ovation, bitch. Like that shit stood up like a person and the guy said that its front legs were just kind of like dangling against its chest and it was awkwardly staring directly at him. He described the eyes as like strangely reflecting in the headlights of his car. He said that the eyes were almost human looking and the thing was definitely too tall for any deer even standing on its hind legs. He said the worst part wasn't how it looked, it was the fact that it never broke eye contact the entire time, like it was sizing him up. Like even as he sped away, that thing still remained eye contact the entire time, even through his rear view mirrors. Listen, I get it, if one single person said this, you could write it off as somebody lying. But there are so many. One woman on Reddit wrote a story about how she saw one when she was out on her porch smoking a cigarette out in eastern Kentucky. She said at first she thought it was just a regular deer standing out there and like beyond the trees. As she was like observing it, trying to take pictures of it, she realized that it wasn't doing anything deer-like. Instead, it was staring directly at her. And the longer she looked at it, the weirder it became. Like, her brain literally couldn't process what she was seeing anymore. And she just got like a really bad feeling about it, so she went inside immediately and locked all of her doors and windows. And she said that she could hear a bipedal walking around her house for hours after that. As somebody who has been to the Appalachian Mountains many times and have had many experiences, I believe it. I 100% believe it. There is nothing actually about the Appalachian Trail that you can tell me that I don't believe, to be honest with you. Please be careful if you decide to go explore out there, as it is a very beautiful place to go see and to respect. Even though you might have the utmost respect for the area, respect does not outweigh the danger of that place, because it does not care if you respect it. It doesn't respect you. To be quite fucking honest, it doesn't respect you, and it never will, and it will swallow you whole if you are not prepared. The place is older than most everything in North America, and if you don't believe in cryptid stuff, you are a fool.
I received a scary story submission a few weeks ago and it really got me. Mainly because the thing discussed in this story I have had a fear of for the longest time, and I honestly thought that I was alone in it. I never thought I would hear somebody talk about this thing in this context, so please let me know if you also have a fear of this thing. I woke up one night at around 3 a.m. because I could hear somebody breathing heavily beside my bed. At first I thought my little brother had come into my room again, and I tried to roll over to tell him to get out, but my body wouldn't move. My chest locked instantly with panic, and I knew immediately I was having sleep paralysis. I'd experienced it all before. Pressure on your chest, shadow in the corner, feeling watched. I knew the logic of it. Your brain wakes before your body does, and hallucinations happen. But this felt different, because the breathing stopped the second I realized I was awake. My room went completely silent. Then something shifted beside my bed, but I was paralyzed and I could only move my eyes. My curtains were open just enough for some moonlight to illuminate my room, and as soon as I moved my eyes to look beside me, I saw a man. Except he wasn't a shadow, he was a man. He was tall and thin, wearing dark clothing. I kept trying to make out a face, and as my eyes slowly adjusted to the darkness, my stomach dropped. I recognized him instantly. It was him, the man that people supposedly see in their dreams all around the world. I remember trying to tell myself it was just because I'd seen images of him before and my brain was recycling it. That explanation lasted maybe 3 seconds, because he started leaning in closer to me. I tried to scream, but of course, nothing came out. He put his face right in mine, and his smile widened. Then he said, in what I can only describe as the most terrifying and distorted voice I have ever heard, "You're not dreaming." Only then was I able to scream, and I launched myself up out of my bed. Of course, my room was empty. I stayed awake for the rest of the night. The next morning, I told myself it was just a bad paralysis episode. I even laughed about it later, since I'd never heard of someone seeing him during sleep paralysis. But then, things started happening when I wasn't even asleep. It felt like I started seeing him everywhere. I'd see characters on TV that slightly resembled him, or I would notice his features on other people when I was out in public. He wouldn't leave my head. One night, I was feeling particularly anxious and decided to sleep with my TV on. As I went to turn it on though, I could have sworn I saw him in the reflection of the black TV screen sitting in my bed next to me. As soon as I looked directly though, he was gone. I honestly thought that this experience had just really messed me up and I needed a few days before I could fully forget about it and move on. A couple weeks passed and it was easier for me to sleep now. I really was beginning to move past it and the memory didn't seem so scary anymore, but that was short-lived. I woke up again in the middle of the night and instantly had this sinking feeling of dread. I was on my side this time, but again, I couldn't move. It wasn't long before I heard the same distorted voice shout directly in my ear, "Stop dreaming about me." I shot up out of bed once again and of course, found my room empty. My ear actually ached and was ringing from how loud it was. I didn't see him again until a few months later. I was home alone one night and had just gotten home from a full morning of classes and an 8-hour shift at work. I was exhausted. I was laying on the couch in the living room watching TV and started to doze off at some point. I remember waking up to the volume on the TV progressively getting louder. I thought I was laying on the remote or something, so I quickly sat up to turn the volume back down. And there he was, sitting on the other couch. He wasn't smiling this time, he was completely straight-faced. Before I could properly react, he looked right at me and said, "You keep waking up," before I could get close enough. And once again, I screamed and woke myself up. The TV was at its normal volume and the house was still empty. This happened to me about a month ago. I don't know why I keep seeing him and I don't know what to do. All I do know is that I'll be seeing him again and I'm terrified.
Something used to walk through our dormitory at 3 a.m. every single night. Let me tell you about it. When I was 11 years old, I got sent to boarding school and we stayed in a dormitory. Basically, there was a bunch of bunk beds in one room and we all slept together in the same place. They used to keep like saucepans kind of by the entrance doors, and the doors were always locked at night. There was one night I woke up exactly at 3 a.m. and I know what time it was because I wore a cheap digital watch. And I just woke up and I looked up at the ceiling and everything was very quiet. And that's when I heard the entrance door creak open. At first I thought maybe it's just one of the teachers or the guards, and I tried to look over, and that's when I noticed like freezing air coming in. It was the kind of cold where I literally felt like I just got jumped into a cold plunge bath. And I remember I went completely still. I could no longer move. And I was on top of like a 3-tier bunk bed, the very top of it, and I felt completely exposed still. I tried putting a blanket over my head, but my body was not responding, but I was fully awake, I swear to you that. And I felt it enter the room, and it was like it was going around the room, checking each bed one by one. At one point, I actually heard the saucepans at the entrance kind of clink together. It went silent quickly after that, but I could still feel this thing walking around, and the weirdest part is I didn't hear any footsteps, it was just a presence. And when I say everything was silent, I mean the people that were snoring before stopped snoring. And as soon as I could tell, I felt that eventually it reached my bunk. I was sweating so profusely, I was completely wet. It felt like I just took a shower. Like my clothes were completely soaked, and then that's when I could feel like long fingers touch the metal part of my bunk, and it was like it was slowly dragging its fingers across it. In that moment, I had a horrible feeling that whatever it was, it knew that I was awake, and it was just staring at me, waiting for me to flinch. The air got colder and colder until I feel like I couldn't even breathe. I genuinely thought I was going to die. After what felt like a very intense couple of minutes, I felt it leave and it went outside of the doors. And after it left, I noticed that the snoring continued, like so wild, right on cue. Then the next morning came and I had sweated so bad that my bunkmates, they literally thought that I wet the bed. I went and I told the teachers that I wanted to go home. I wanted to call my parents so bad. But I couldn't explain why I wanted to go home without sounding absolutely crazy, so everybody thought that I was just homesick. This wasn't a one-time thing either. This happened the next night, and it happened the next night, until I noticed that it was a pattern. So when I would pray before bed, these are the nights that this thing would come and visit. When I didn't pray before bed, I didn't wake up. Nothing came to visit. I was so terrified that eventually I just stopped praying before bed. There was one time where I forced myself to open my eyes and peek, and I saw it. It was a couple beds away, and it looked like a human figure, but it had a bunch of like dark layers on, like dark robe layers, and it had these green spikes coming out, almost like it was wearing like an armor. There's also this green mist, almost like a green aura, surrounding it. I know how fake this sounds, but I swear I'm telling the truth. And at one point, the teachers even brought in a priest to bless the dormitory. Ever since then, I've never doubted that paranormal things exist. I just hope that nothing like this ever happens to me again.
There may be a creepy reason why truck drivers don't pick up hitchhikers. Now, there was this trucker driving late one night on Interstate 90. And as he made his way down the highway, he sees this hitchhiker on the side of the road. He's got his thumb out. He's got this rain poncho on with these ripped up jeans and these black boots. Well, during this time, it was pouring down rain. And he felt kind of bad for this guy. So he pulls his truck over to the side of the road. Instantly, this guy jumps in the passenger side of the truck. Well, the first thing this trucker notices about the guy is he's completely dry. There's not even a speck of water on him, even though it was pouring down raining outside. The other weird thing was he didn't say anything when he got in the truck. He just looked forward. He said normally when he would pick up a hitchhiker, they would be very grateful and they would tell him where he was going. But this guy just didn't say anything. So for the next hour, he said he tried to make small talk with this guy, but he seemed like he just was very quiet. After about an hour of driving, he said this guy started to get very fidgety. He was, moving his shoulders and his arms, kind of kicking his legs forward. And he said he started just kind of going back and forth, back and forth. And he said he thought something was wrong with him. And he's like, next town, I'm going to drop this guy off. Like, I can't hang out with him anymore. Like, there's something off about him. Said this guy just became more and more just bothered. Like he just felt very uncomfortable or something. He said that's when the guy yells out, "Take me to the Badlands." And the trucker's like, "What? No, I'm not going to take you to the Badlands. Like, I'm staying on the interstate." And he said, "Take me to the Badlands." He's like, "No, I am not taking you to the Badlands. I will drop you off at the next town." And the guy said, "Take me to the Badlands." And he looked directly at him. And that's when the trucker noticed his eyes changed. They now looked almost like a thin little strip of color down the middle of his eye, almost like a cat's eye. So he said, "You know what? I'm done with this." He pulls the truck over to the side of the road. And he said immediately as he stopped, this guy jumped in the cab of his truck. And he started to hear banging and loud noises. And he said this guy was just moving all over. And he was ripping at his clothes and ripping at his skin. And as he looks back there, he said he could tell like this, something was really wrong with this guy. And then he hears this loud growl. So he jumps out of the truck. And as he gets about 15 feet away, he said he watched this guy come out of the truck door and crawl up the side of the top of the truck. And he gets up on top of this truck. And he said at that point in time, he had his pow pow with him. So he, goes pow pow. And he said after it hit him, the guy jumped off the truck and took off running out into the middle of nowhere. And he said, he got immediately back in his truck. He kept on driving. Well, a couple weeks later, he hears about this truck that was found near the Badlands. And eventually they found the trucker. He had been found several feet away from his vehicle, and he had been ripped to pieces. What would happen if you responded to a mimic? Now, when we hear about these encounters with mimics, there is often this invitation to let them in, to open the door, or to follow. But what would happen if you actually did? Now, there was this girl named Jill from South Carolina. She was driving home one night at 1 a.m., coming back from work. When she goes inside her house, all the lights are off. Her mom is upstairs asleep. Well, as she walks through the living room, she hears her mother's voice say, "Hello, Jill." She goes, "Mom, why are you up so late?" And all she hears is, "Hello, Jill." She goes, "Okay, Mom, like, why is all the lights off and why are you in the kitchen?" And she just responds, "Hello, Jill." So she was kind of freaked out. I was like, okay, is something wrong with my mom? She flips the lights on and there's no one there. And as she goes upstairs to her mom's bedroom, she sees that her door is closed. When she opens it, she sees that her mom is in bed, sound asleep. So she starts trying to rationalize. Okay, maybe my mom was talking in her sleep. So she just ignores it. Well, a couple days later, she said she was sitting in her bed, in her bedroom, when she sees her mom walk by. And she says, hey, Mom, can you go downstairs and grab me a bag of chips? But her mom doesn't respond. So she goes to the door. She looks out the hallway. Her mom is not there. She is not even at the house. A few days after this, she is once again in her bedroom. And she hears her mom calling for her, telling her to come downstairs. So she gets ready to go down to the hallway, and she remembers, wait a second, my mom is not home. So she stays in her bedroom until her mom gets there. And finally, a couple days after this, she is coming home from a friend's house. And as she gets out of her car, she notices her mom is standing on the side of the house with her face turned. And she goes, Mom, are you okay? Like, what are you doing outside? And she hears, hello, Jill. She's like, Mom? And she's like, come with me into the woods. And she's like, what do you mean? And she goes, come with me in the backyard to the woods. And she's kind of like, that's not my mom. She runs inside the house. She closes the door, and she sees her mom is there in the kitchen. So she goes to her mom, and she starts crying. And she says, there's something that's following me, and it's pretending to be you. And her mom's just telling her, like, honey, it's okay. Like, there's nothing going on. Like, you're just stressing yourself out. It'll be okay. But she was insistent, Mom, something is pretending to be you. Well, many months pass, and she stops having these encounters. But then one night she gets a call from her mom. And her mom is like, hey, honey, I heard you calling me to go down into the basement. But I'm in the bathroom right now. I'll be down, in like 10 minutes. And she's like, no, Mom, do not go down there. Do not go into the basement. That is not me. I am not at home. And her mom's like, what are you talking about? Like, are you playing jokes with me? And she's like, no, Mom, I am not home. And her mom didn't believe her. She thought she was making it up. Well, a week later, she finds that her mother had passed away. And she felt like whatever was pretending to be her mother and then pretended to be her had something to do with it. And did her mom respond to this memory? At night when you have to turn the lights off in your house and you get to that last light and you switch it off and it's completely dark and it feels like all of a sudden your house has now become the most haunted house in the world and you have to make a run all the way back to your bedroom. There might be something to that. Now, when we are doing this, right, we put ourselves in a vulnerable position. And I think anything negative, any kind of spirit that is a negative entity knows this. This is the best time to scare us. And they're trying to see if they could scare us just a little bit to gain entry and to allow them permission to come into our lives. So this is a story I heard out of Rockford, Illinois. There was this girl, and she lived in this bigger house all alone. And it started to get late. She wanted to go to bed. So she starts going through her house, turning off all the lights. She gets to the last light, which is in the living room. And when she hits it off and it goes completely dark, she gets that feeling. Well, she walks through her living room, and as she walks past her kitchen, she turns and kind of glances in, and she sees a woman, like in a white gown, just standing in the kitchen. And she's like, who are you? What do you want? And the woman just starts walking towards her. So she takes off running to her bedroom. She closes her door, locks it, and she calls the police. The police show up, and she says, come inside. Like, there's a woman in my house. I'm in my bedroom, locked in there. I don't want to come out. So they go through her house, they search it, they don't find anyone. And they said, ma'am, are you sure you didn't just see something? Like, are you just tired and maybe there was like a hallucination? And she goes, no, I'm for sure there was a woman in my kitchen. So they said, well, we can't find anything. You probably are just tired. Why don't you just go to bed? So they leave, and she goes back up to her bedroom. And when she lays down in bed, she kind of feels like, you know what, maybe that was just, in my head. Maybe I'm just tired and I need to get some sleep. So as she turns around to adjust herself in the bed, there is the woman standing right next to her. And she jumps up, she runs out of her house, and she said as she's in the front of her house, she can see the woman looking out of her window, staring at her.
Oh my God, I have just had an absolutely terrifying experience. So I've been out for the evening and come back home. And as some of you know that are following the account, I've had a fair bit of paranormal activity going on lately. And I've come home, it was all dark downstairs. My partner took himself off to bed a few hours ago. I've been at my parents'. And as I opened the door, I thought, oh God, it's really cold in here. Even though it's not great weather here at the moment. It was exceptionally cold downstairs, more so than it was outside. And I swear, at the end of the hallway, I seen a dark silhouette, and it looked like to be that of a female. And obviously it made me jump out my skin. I went, whoa, I like shouted loud, and in the blink of an eye it was gone. And I don't know if I've imagined it or what, with all the what's going on lately, but it was the temperature as well and the atmosphere in the air of when I went in. And I'm telling you now, I'd seen an apparition in the hallway. And of course, I wish I had, got the camera out and started recording things and I could actually show this to you. But rest assured, if I ever, get any signs like this now, temperature drops, bangs, etc., I do get the camera out, but of course, most of the time I don't catch anything. And then sometimes you're getting consecutive sort of activity all in one go. And you can't win them because people are saying, oh, it's too good to be true. And then at the same time, I'm mostly catching nothing at all. So it's a tough one, but it's left me a little bit shaken, to be honest with you, to the point where I've actually had to come back into the car and take myself out on a little drive before going back home, because my partner's asleep and I just needed to get my thoughts out. I think that's the first time I've ever actually, if that's what it was, seen a ghost. I've had tons of paranormal experiences since I've been doing, my ghost sort of adventures that I do up and down the country and collecting haunted objects, and which, it's probably my own fault, but I love an antique with a story. I always will. I'm an old worldly loving person. But that has really scared me, that. She appeared to be, it was a split second, folks. It happened so fast. I couldn't see any features. It was dark and the silhouette was really dark as well. But it was a smaller frame, slightly hunched, I would say, very thin. And it looked as though the hair maybe was up in a bun or tied back or something like that. But it was most certainly the silhouette of a woman. I could make the dress out, and by the body shape. But as I say, as I did the gasp, it was just gone. And then I've flicked all the lights on and there isn't anything there. But it's interesting that even if this is something that I've just imagined through being spooked, I could have seen my breath when I went in and it was icy cold. I mean, I don't know how I'm going to sleep tonight with this. Just leave me your thoughts on this one. I don't even know what to make of this. Terrified.
Dude, I have filmed this video like a million times, but this is my secret account because I'm low-key embarrassed to make story times on my main account like this. So this account only has one person so far, which is my boyfriend, but this is a story time on why you should never walk home alone, even if it's a short distance, at night especially, because there's a lot of weird people out there and you don't know their intentions and you don't know if they're mentally stable or not. And in this case, I'm pretty sure this person was not. So on this specific night, I was at the dollar store with my mom and my boyfriend was just getting off of work, and it was about 9:30 at night, and I was at the dollar store trying to take $5 out of my account cash to give my mom for gas money, and I was also trying to buy this heart ceramic jewelry dish thing. And that was a whole night. We ended up shutting down both of the tills because they don't do money cash back after your purchase from your account. So both the tills stopped working and everyone had to leave without buying what they were planning on buying. So that was fun. Everyone was pissed. But right when we were leaving, sorry, I use my hands a lot when I talk. My boyfriend had texted me or called me. I can't remember. But he said that the place I usually get dropped off by my mom, because she can't take me by the house. It's a long story. There was this girl, my boyfriend was in an Uber, and she was walking, and this girl looked to be about our age, which is 18, and was wearing a long light pink dress, no shoes, no socks, and had long black hair holding a teddy bear. So yeah, pretty creepy. So I started freaking out. I was like, I have to walk home when she's just out exactly at the place where I'm getting dropped off? Hell no. Anyways, my boyfriend comes to the market where I get dropped off to pick me up and walk me home. And he picks me up and walks me home. And I forgot to mention, on the way to the market with my mom, I thought I saw this girl that looked to be just wearing socks and like a light pink dress. Like I only saw like the bottom of like where her ankles and feet were, getting into this car ahead of us. But that wasn't her, I don't think. It might have just been another girl, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So my boyfriend and me walk home, and I text my mom and I tell her that we make it. And a little bit later on in the night, she texts me. She was like, hey, I saw that weirdo chick walking. She was walking the opposite direction of where we live, thankfully. But she wasn't 18. My mom said that she could tell she was a grown woman. So yeah, that's like straight up out of a horror movie. When I tell you that shit freaks me out, that shit freaks me out. But moral of the story is people be in their own little bubbles, and they don't really be thinking that anything bad can happen, especially close to home. But you'd be surprised at what types of people and things are lurking out there in the dark, especially at night. So watch your surroundings, be diligent, and stay safe, especially at night. Carry something on you, because especially if you're a girl, you don't really got hands, carry something on you. Have a good night or day.
So how is it that a dead woman is able to solve her own murder? By possessing her coworker and leading police toward the evidence that implicated her killer. In August 1977, detectives were 6 months deep into one of the most frustrating cases they were tasked with solving. Back on February 21st, Teresita Bassa was found stabbed to death with a kitchen knife and set on fire under a pile of clothing. And police had absolutely no idea who was responsible. Even after interviewing Teresita's friends and family, they were no closer to finding their prime suspect, until the investigators in Chicago got a tip from the Evanston Police Department to look into a man named Alan Showery. How did they get this name? Because a doctor named Jose went into the Evanston Police Department claiming that his wife had become possessed on 3 separate occasions by the spirit of Teresita Bassa. Jose told police that he didn't even know Teresita, and that he really wasn't even a man that believed in the paranormal. But in the months following Teresita's murder, his wife's behavior had rapidly changed. For one, the voice Jose heard coming from his wife's mouth did not belong to her, and she kept insisting that a woman named Teresita had been killed by a man repairing her TV. Because he now knows details that even investigators didn't, Jose was afraid to go to police with this info. How would you even begin to explain how you know all of this without being implicated as Teresita's murderer? Believing that he was speaking with Teresita's spirit through his wife, who was telling Jose that Alan had stolen her jewelry, Jose considered that the missing jewelry might be able to prove to police that Alan was indeed her killer. So once Jose went to police with this story, detectives showed up at Alan's apartment. At first, he denied having anything to do with it, but he somehow had possession of 2 pieces of jewelry that belonged to Teresita. He had gifted this jewelry to his girlfriend as a late Christmas present. And now, after being confronted with that evidence, Alan changed his story. He said he knew Teresita from work, and that she knew Alan was in a tough financial spot, so she had tipped him generously for helping her with her errands and other tasks like
repairing her TV. He then admitted that he had gone to Teresita's apartment that night, but had only rendered her unconscious before stealing what little he could find before lighting her apartment on fire. During the trial, he ultimately pleaded guilty and was given a reduced sentence of just 14 years. Now, of course, there are skeptics that find this hard to believe, and that's understandable. But the fact that a random person somehow knew about the jewelry that Alan had taken off from Teresita's body is bizarre, to say the least. Knowing that exact detail about a murder you were not present for is really what makes this truly unexplainable.
My boyfriend has skin so dry that sometimes his knuckles bleed. It'll happen at the most inconvenient times and the blood will just splatter all over. Over the steering wheel, over tree bark, over our bedroom door, over my face. And people ask and worry, you know, oh, poor boy with the knuckles always slit. And he seems to always be hurting. Not hurting others, but hurting me. We tried lots of things, you know, creams, ointments, makeup, prayers, but they always crack again. Crack and splatter always at the most inconvenient times. When we're driving late at night, when we're going to bed, when we're alone. You know, maybe it's an allergy thing, because, I mean, he seems to be allergic to a lot of things. Like to my cat, and to my friends, and my nails when they're painted bright red. But my grandmother suggested a remedy, a herbal one, made with flowers of the most beautiful kind. So we made a little patch of dirt and seeds in her big backyard. And we got my boyfriend to help to bring the richest substrate. And it worked, I swear. And now I can paint my nails bright red and his knuckles pale white.
Storytime about a woman that was stuck in a toxic relationship for years until she finally decided to do something about it. Paranormal edition. This took place back in 2012. I was in a relationship with this man who honestly just was not good for me. We were stuck in this endless toxic cycle. We would make up and break up and go on and on and on. I honestly was over it and didn't want to have anything to do with him, but he wouldn't leave me alone. We were living in Texas at the time, but he originally came from DC, so I honestly wanted him to just move back to DC and stay out of my life. At some point, someone that I knew told me that I had to contact a man that could help. I ended up having a conversation with this man over the phone, only giving him a few minor details about my ex. What stood out to me was that he knew things about my ex that I had never mentioned. He described my ex's personality, how he reacted when he would be upset, and things that were extremely specific and accurate. He then told me to get him a pair of my ex's underwear or boxers, so I did just that. A little while later, this man called me back and said that the work was done and that things were going to change, and soon my ex would finally leave me alone, that I have now been protected. That same night, I happened to be out with my mom walking my two dogs when we came across this intersection. Right across this intersection, there was a house that had a huge gate and these two giant Rottweilers behind the gate. As we're walking, we see when these two Rottweilers jump over this large iron gate. They run across 4 lanes of traffic going straight towards us. My first instinct was to protect my mom and our dogs, so I pretty much put my arms around all of us and I just braced for impact, waiting for these dogs to attack. But the strangest thing ended up happening. The attack never came. It was almost like we were surrounded by an invisible barrier. I heard when the dogs literally smacked hard into whatever was surrounding us and screamed out of pain as if they had ran straight into a wall. Crying in pain, both dogs turned around and ran back towards their house. Me and my mom looked at each other in complete shock, trying to come up with a reason or an explanation as to what just happened. Less than a week later, my ex finally bought plane tickets and moved back to DC. I have never seen or heard from him again. Since then, I have given my life to Christ, and I ask for forgiveness and to remove any ties that I may have been tied to because of what I ended up doing to get my ex to leave me alone. Present day, I honestly hope that my ex is doing okay no matter where he is, but till this day, neither my mom and I know what ended up protecting us that night. Like, what was this invisible barrier that kept us safe? Like always, what do you guys think?
Might have known the story of real life boogeyman.
I hope you enjoy this big, long podcast episode. The part that you're going to see me and Cullen talking about is more like spiritual and religious. The part that's on the podcast is going to deep dive into the stuff that TikTok and Facebook mostly remove me for talking about. The crazy conspiracy stuff, the supernatural, the paranormal. So definitely stick around for the whole thing. All right, this is going to be another long-form video where we're going to talk about one of the biggest conspiracies out there, and it's what happens to us when we die. What happens to the soul? Okay, and how we know about this kind of stuff really is we have to either go by religious texts that are left to us or near-death experiences, which is what we're highly focusing on today. So here with me again is my father-in-law, Colin, and you're probably going to watch a weenie dog battle in the background. He will not be quiet. We've tried for a long time now. So I want to let Colin start off on the NDEs and what he thinks happens to our soul or our spirit after it's over for us here on this world.
There's several different things on that aspect of it. When we die, I truly believe, not necessarily does our soul ever go to heaven or go to hell or whatever. I think we move from this earthly plane, we leave our body, and of course our soul is nothing but all energy, right? So you can't destroy energy, you can't create energy, you can just...
I'm trying not to laugh, but these weenie dogs are just duking it out.
They're retarded. Allie, quit, stupid.
All right, go ahead. So our energy...
it just moves into a different form. So when we leave this plane, I believe we go into more or less a spirit world, right? So usually after we leave, and it could be different from other people, but it's all been documented, or near-death experiences that people have talked about certain aspects, and some of them are pretty close to one another. Some of them are completely different, but a lot of times people feel that there is just nothing but peace and love when they die, and they're, some go through the tunnel, see a light, whatever the case may be. But they're eventually met and greeted and brought back into a fold, what would be called a spiritual or a consciousness, a group consciousness.
Gotcha. So, and that's a pretty good point that I want to touch on here in a little bit, is the group consciousness, or possibly a hive mind type deal. But I'm gonna be the devil's advocate just for a second and say, scientifically we know that our brain produces DMT whenever we are getting near death.
Yeah.
So a lot of people say, oh, that's just your brain producing this chemical. It makes you hallucinate and see all this different crazy stuff. And I don't really like that, because I think that the DMT that our brain produces might be what helps us get to cross over. It's something our brain makes naturally on its own, and I don't agree with the whole science of it. As it's just what helps you cope with death. It's why you feel warm and invited. Because why does everybody see the same hallucinogenic stuff? Almost all these NDEs, near-death experiences, it's weird how they can be from different cultures, different peoples, different backgrounds, but it's like a 90% match rate. When you hear what they discuss, it is so creepy how almost 100% on the dot they all seem to be.
Well, and man, there's a lot of different aspects to all this, and it depends on what level you want to believe. And what I say on that end is, how open-minded are you, and how open and is your consciousness? Okay, so man, I could go on and on about Christ consciousness and all kinds of different stuff. We'll get into that here in a minute, but
you're a big religious guy, right? On the soul and the spirit.
I wouldn't say as far as any denomination or whatever. But spiritual and religion on that type of stuff, I really dive in deep on that stuff.
Yeah. I wasn't meaning any kind of particular denomination. It's just a lot of people think that there's either science or there's some kind of religion, spiritual stuff. So, which side do you lean more on that?
It goes hand in hand.
Yeah, okay, I'm glad you said that, because I was about to argue that point, that a lot of people like to say if the science is one thing, then it doesn't mean the spiritual. Why can't we have them both?
Exactly.
The science might just prove the spiritual, and the spiritual might prove the science.
And it does. But it's whatever they're actually going to disclose to us that we hadn't already found out already.
Yeah, and it's another thing I'm glad you said, because I do think they know a lot more on it than what we are told. But I think to avoid mass panic or literally a crusade, I think they don't tell us. Because what if the government came out and said, hey, guys, I know that there's Islam, there's Christianity, there's Mormons, there's a Catholic, whatever. What if they came out and said, hey, the Catholics are right, everybody else is wrong? I truly don't think that people could accept it. I really don't. I think it would cause a crusade.
They couldn't accept it 2,000 years ago when Jesus Christ came down, because he was changing everything.
Yep. Okay. Yep.
100% of everything. And what he taught. Ooh.
I think even worse if the government came out and said, "You're all wrong. It's actually this." And every time we die, we actually get reincarnated. I think there would be, there's a couple of religions that do believe in reincarnation.
We're going to get into that. We're going to get into that. But as far as Jesus Christ and Christ consciousness and everything else goes on that aspect, he came down and. Of course, with the New Testament and everything else, he was teaching a completely different role on everything. And you really have to look past, the words in red on that. And, Jesus spoke in parables. You can't take what he said completely 100% literate. You have to look deeper into it, because he uses symbolism and metaphors and all kinds of different stuff into that.
Not just that, I want to touch on read between the line thing, because I think that's I think so many people struggle with that in religion. And if you guys, I've been attacked in my videos for being both a believer and not a believer at the same time. People just attack me for whatever I say, and you'll see that happen a lot as you're on here. I think there's so much you have to read between the lines, because, like you said, the red words in the Bible are what Jesus said, but we have to say that's what he said supposedly. Because he might have used words that we can't even fathom or comprehend and understand. So when we translated it, we just translated it to what we could understand. Or
it's been translated too many times, over and over again. I mean, and there's of course your main three, main four, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But then you're going to dive in and look into other things, like the Book of Timothy and all kinds of other shit on there that really actually supposedly said what he said. But besides all that, when your soul dies, or when your body dies, I 100% believe this is just a vessel. This is just the car we're driving.
So we're a spiritual entity having a human experience instead of the other way around.
Exactly, 100%. And what I personally believe, and I'll go to my grave saying it, that the earth is a school.
Yeah, okay, I've heard that a lot. Yeah.
It's a school.
There's lessons you need to learn.
Yes, sir. Yep. Yes, sir. And one of the main things is, the two main things is service to others and love. That's one of the big number two that you have to learn in this realm. And when you start learning that, then your soul will advance. And it may not necessarily after you reach that point come back to earth. Mm-hmm. You've advanced in your stages to where you're going to move on and keep on climbing up the ladder.
Do you think it's possible to get knocked down the rungs of the ladder if you're a shitty person?
I don't think you can get knocked down. I think you'll have to repeat that grade.
Repeat that grade? Okay, kind of like in school. So, yep. Kind of like literally in school.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And for me, myself, 100% believe that there's a higher entity, a creator.
Yeah, and we've talked about that a bunch on our videos. That it's,
and it's not the creator of this vehicle. It's not the creator of this body. It's what's in us, our soul. And the way I like to think of it is, okay, you can go to all different aspects, God, Jesus, Holy Spirit, whatever. The way I see it is there's one entity, one consciousness, one source, but it's a collective Okay, so just think of it as kind of like a sun. Okay, you know, our sun in the sky. All right, say that's the creator. Okay, so everything comes out of the sun. You know, life, whatever, creation. Okay, so it makes more sense to me that we come from that. So we are more or less a spark or an ember of that sun.
So I want to throw it at you in a saying the same thing, just in a slightly different metaphor of the way I like to think about it. Because I don't know if you guys know, my mom was a science teacher. I grew up with a science teacher mom. You know, surprise, surprise, that's where my love of facts and stuff comes from. Okay, so we always learn in school, this is the weirdest thing, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Everybody knows that. That's saying. So this is the way I like to think about it. Imagine the creator that we call, you know, God, or if you will, you know, whatever you want to call it. What if we are the microorganisms inside of that creator, that being, that thing? In everything around us, the earth, the air, everything is a part of that living creature. And the way I like to think about that is, I mean, think about our own body. Like right now, I am Matt, you are Cullen. But if you break it down on a molecular level and you zoom in, you're not Cullen and I'm not Matt. We're actually billions and billions of, you know, individual living organisms. Like if you were to zoom in on our bodies right now, you'll see literally microorganisms living their whole life not knowing that they're actually part of a human body. Like they have no idea. You know, like our atoms, every 7 years, we're a completely new person. Every 7 years, all of the cells that are on you right now will have died and they will be new cells. Just like how I think here on this earth, we might be dying and there are just new people that replace us and we're just part of this greater whole, essentially.
Hey, that's a good way to look at it. And the way I see it, okay. So, in the beginning, you know, there's no beginning, there's no end. Yeah, I mean, everything is infinite. But the creator basically, say like the sun or your creator, is the end all be all, the start of everything. But in order to know itself, it split, right?
It splits. So we're all the creators, what you're saying, essentially.
That's what I'm getting to right there. So
guys, if you are watching this video right now and you've made it to 12 minutes, you obviously are very interested in what we're saying. Go over to the Spotify podcast or the Apple podcast. It's called Matt, M-A-T-T, from Nomads. We're going to keep talking for another 45 minutes to an hour. So if you've enjoyed it this far, come follow us over there. See what we got to say. We'd love to have you there. Thank you so much for watching this portion, and we'll see you for the rest later.
Hey guys, y'all know, if you are at all familiar with my content, that I don't ever post personal things on my page. I've been like trying to sit here and get my shit together so I don't like hop on here crying, but you know what? No shame. It is okay. I, for the last year, have been thinking about and like mulling over whether I want to make some videos about a particular subject, about my experience in the past with domestic violence. And I'm like literally like I'm scared to talk about it, and it's vulnerable. But when I look back at the girl that was in this 5-year relationship with somebody who was abusive, I wish that I had had more of like this type of content online, because it is a very small community of people online that even like talk about this. And there's something in particular, I think, looking back, when I did find content where it was like somebody sharing their personal story, that was like very powerful for me when I was like back in a situation like that. Being able to find bits and pieces of like myself in somebody else's story, it ultimately became like a stepping stone or a catalyst for me to being able to get out of that situation. And I am safe now. My son and I, we are happy, we're thriving, we're healing. It is still an ongoing process for me to keep us safe. Okay, I had to take a break, but I'm back. So, yes, it is still a process, you know, for me to like keep us safe legally. If I do this, will have to be careful with how I word things, but yeah, I've always been like very private about this. Only my immediate family and like my best friends know that I've even gone through something like this. I never, if you had asked me years ago, never would have thought I would have become like a victim of DV, but it can happen to anybody. And when I look back at that time in my life, I was even more private about it. I was like terrified to tell anybody what I was going through, and didn't for years. And honestly, at the time was also so mentally fucked from just the amount of trauma that I like was going through over and over, that I didn't for a long time even realize like how bad it was. So when I did turn to the internet for like solace or like a safe space, it was kind of like my only place at the time to turn to. And it's not only like affirmed me and validated me, it helped me wake up to the reality of how bad things actually were. And like I said, ultimately it became the catalyst for me getting out. And that is why I think that talking about shit like this is so important. It's not just that it helps people like get out and like save their lives potentially. It is also because silence protects abusers. We shouldn't be quiet about stuff like this, you know. And like, I don't know, that's just my thoughts on it. If anybody would potentially be interested in this, please let me know. And I also, just for the video, I'm going to include some links to the National Domestic Violence Hotline. That also, you know, was something that I like turned to at the time, that was helpful for me. And I also think, you know, because I'm like going through a lot like legally, keeping my son and I like safe, that is important to talk about as well, because there's just so much nuance to not just being in a relationship, but being out of a relationship and like keeping yourself safe. And everybody's story is so different. And it is so important to hear, I think, different perspectives and stuff. So I don't know. You guys let me know. And we'll go from there.